As we patiently wait for the schedule release to come up on Thursday, the Raiders continue to make minor roster moves. That plus more on Tuesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for May 12th, 2026.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one sports podcast network. You know, we're very proud of that. We're also very proud of the fact that this show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of your support and the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good by way of the YouTube page. So we shout him out. We appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You could hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, you know, we've got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line for you, 707-654-4693. We'll hear from you as we close out the show. Calls, texts, as we normally do. We'll do that coming up, segment number 3. Segment number 2, we'll talk about the Raiders having a plan. We'll have a conversation about the Raiders and what they've done this offseason and how they've done a really good job. How do they translate that into the regular season? It's one thing to win the offseason. How do you win in the regular season? I'll explain all that coming up in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, and we'll jump into that after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDON, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. So, off top, the Raiders made a couple minor roster moves on Monday, and look, this is something that they're going to continue to do. They're going to do this all the way leading up to more of the OTAs, obviously mandatory minicamp. Training camp, they'll do a bunch of different roster moves, the preseason, and even once the regular season, once the 53-man roster is set, there'll be a good 3 or 4 weeks where just because you're on the 53-man roster, unless you're one of the big-time names, you better make sure that you're on point because anything could happen. Any kind of adjustments can be made. As Kirk Morrison has pointed out multiple times, the Raiders have the first option when it comes to the waiver wire for the first 3 weeks of the regular season. So anytime someone hits the waiver wire, the Raiders have the first right of refusal. They can claim that person off top for the first 3 weeks. So just keep that in the back of your mind going all the way into the regular season. But the move that was made on Monday by the Silver and Black, again, minor. They signed free agent linebacker Cameron McGrone. He was originally drafted by the Patriots in the 5th round of the 2021 NFL Draft, has played in 27 career games, totaled 4 tackles, 9 special team stops between his time with the Patriots, Colts, and the Cleveland Browns. So he was primary special teamer in parts of 4 seasons with the Colts before being waived. Also played in 1 game for Cleveland last year before being released. So, again, very small, minor move. I will say, and I can appreciate this, I've said it multiple times, the Raiders clearly have had an emphasis on special teams. Something that has not been very good outside of Daniel Carlson was really good for the longest. Obviously, A.J. Cole is still really good. But the Raiders have struggled in special teams, and clearly that's a point of emphasis. They're literally trying to attack all 3 phases of the team. Normally, we don't talk about special teams until something happens, until there's a breakdown. So I can appreciate that they're at least attacking that. So they add Cameron McGrone. Not saying he's going to be there for the long term, but he's going to be there at least for, you know, the camp or OTAs and mandatory minicamp until they find someone better, or unless he sticks, unless he finds a niche for himself on special teams. In a corresponding move, the Raiders waived wide receiver Brendan Rice. So Jerry Rice's son, a guy that I got to know just a little bit last year when he was brought in and added to the practice squad late in the season, never got onto the field, never was able to participate in the game. He has been waived by the Silver and Black. And so, you know, obviously wish him the best. Hope that he latches on somewhere with some team. And I hope that for everybody because, look, these guys are trying to continue and pursue their dreams. It's not easy. And, you know, when one door closes, hopefully for a guy like Brendan Rice or anyone else, that door will open up with another organization. But that obviously is not guaranteed at all. So that was the minor roster moves that were made on Monday by the Silver and Black. Also, there's conversation about the schedule release. We know it's not happening until Thursday, 5 p.m. Pacific time. I'm actually supposed to have my hands on the schedule around 4:30 as I'll be doing a show from Raiders HQ. And so the NFL is allowing teams to release it about 30 minutes earlier than the actual special that's going to be on NFL Network and ESPN. So I should have the schedule in my hand around 4:30. Obviously, we'll talk about it coming up on Friday's show. We'll talk about it on Thursday's show, what we're looking forward to, what excites us about the schedule release, all that good stuff. But it's so funny because the NFL is literally a slow drip process. Even though we know the schedule's not dropping until Thursday, we already know a handful of games, and we're going to continue to find out a handful of games. Matter of fact, here's Adam Schefter on the Pat McAfee Show on Monday on ESPN talking about the schedule release and that slow drip process I'm talking about.
Well, first of all, they'll release the international games Wednesday morning on Good Morning Football. So there's 9 of them right now. You know where everybody's playing at this point in time. We already know some of the matchups with the Rams and the Niners early on, the Cowboys and the Ravens early on. You know what happens this week? I know the schedule release is Thursday night, 8 o'clock, ESPN, all those things. But what happens is every day there seems to be another element of the schedule that comes out. Like today, they say the opening Sunday night game of the year is the Dallas Cowboys at the New York Giants. So the Dallas Cowboys, once again, are in prime time. Once again, it's against the New York Giants. September 13th, Sunday night, John Harbaugh's NFL head coaching debut.
What?
And so there's the first, essentially, announcement this week of all the games that are going to be played. And there'll be more. On Wednesday, we'll get the international games. There'll be other news and information that comes out during the week. And by the time we get to Thursday night, it feels like most of the information has kind of been let out by them. But we'll see how it works out. And I always think the opener, the Wednesday night opener this year in Seattle is always a big deal. It feels like that game's going to be either the Chicago Bears or the New England Patriots. My guess today, and it's a guess, would be the Bears in Seattle on that Wednesday night game before we get to the Thursday night Rams 49ers game.
So there's Shefty right there. And look, there's all these international games, 9 of them as a matter of fact. Could the Raiders be involved in one? Sure. It doesn't sound like that they're going to be. I know a lot of people talked about and looked at that 49ers and Raiders game in Mexico City. That could be a possibility. But apparently from what I've been hearing, the 49ers are really trying to petition to make sure that game stays in Santa Clara. They really want that one to be a home game. Could they end up in Paris against the Saints? Sure. But I'm assuming, and it's just an assumption, right? I could be wrong. I'm thinking that the NFL much rather that game be in New Orleans, right? To let that game be a game that the Raiders can travel to New Orleans, get those two fan bases together in New Orleans in the Big Easy. I'm sure that's something that they would definitely enjoy, and I think that would probably be the better venue. But again, that's just, we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. Maybe they'll be a part of that international slot. I just, for some reason, I don't think that they are. But to Schefter's point, we do already know a handful of games. Now, the Raiders aren't one of them. I did see one schedule floating around on social media that had all 17 games of the Raiders. And again, I'm not taking that under consideration because it was like 6 primetime games, and I don't see the Raiders having that many games. But we do know as of right now, Week 1, 49ers versus the Rams, that's in Australia. Week 1, Cowboys at Giants, San Francisco, Sunday Night Football. Week 2, Lions at Bills, Thursday Night Football. Week 3, Ravens versus Cowboys in Brazil. Week 12, Eagles at Cowboys on Thanksgiving. These are all confirmed, right? That Bills game, that Lions at Bills, is going to open up the Bills' new stadium. That's Week 2. We also know that the NFL is expected to have Saturday games in Week 15, Week 16, Week 17, and 18, and then continue with the wild card and divisional round games like they usually do. So 6 consecutive weeks of NFL games on Saturdays. So you know the NFL has no shame taking over every single day. We'll have a Wednesday game for sure this year. Obviously Thursday games. We'll have a Friday game, Saturday games, Sunday games, and Monday. So only thing we're missing is Tuesday. And give them an opportunity. Give them a chance. They'll find a way to go ahead and have some games on Tuesday as well. But again, it's a slow drip process. By the time the schedule drops on Thursday, we'll probably have a handful of the Raider games as well. If you remember, if you've been listening to this show for a long time, remember we had someone call in on the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line and say, hey, the first game of the year, matter of fact, that was when Allegiant Stadium got opened up to fans right after the COVID year. The first game is going to be Monday Night Football against the Baltimore Ravens. I play video games with a guy who works for the Raiders, and he told me that. And he was right, and I don't remember who it was, so I apologize if you are like, hey, that was me. I'm the one who told you that. I can't remember who it was that said it. I wonder, maybe it was Cyrese in the Bay. I'm not 100% sure, but it was someone who told us that. And then they also told us about Alex Leatherwood as the pick in the first round by talking to that same person playing video games online. My gut feeling tells me that person that was playing video games online that was leaking information about the Raiders probably doesn't work with the silver and black anymore. That's just me. Who knows? But that's just me. So like I said, you never know where the leak's going to come from, but somehow, some way, by Thursday, I'm sure we'll have a handful of the Raider games and other games across the National Football League as well. The Raiders have had a plan. I've talked about the plan. You've talked about the plan. the national media is talking about the Raiders and the plan. I'll talk about that coming up. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of the great sponsors we have here on the show, and that is Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And I got a stat for you. In the minute or so I've been talking with you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching, more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And check this out. As a plus, listeners of the Locked On Raiders podcast will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Again, go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support the show. Let them know you heard about it on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Again, Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to get into the plan, want to get into the offseason and how the Raiders have done a really good job with that, and others are noticing. I've talked about it. You've talked about it. Many are talking about it, including the national media. Before we get into that, though, I do want to remind you about the Everydayer Club for ad-free episodes and access to a group chat with all the Locked On Raider podcast listeners. Tap the link in the show notes or go to lockedonraiders.supercast.com. So what I did is I got this from Trey Wingo, his podcast that he does. It's the Straight Facts Homie podcast. He does a really good job. He was a guest on my radio show on Monday, and he had Field Yates on, and they were going through it, talking about offseason winners. And the Raiders are clearly one of the teams that is winning in the offseason. Now, what does that translate into the regular season? Well, that's TBD. But I wanted you to hear this breakdown. I thought it was a really good breakdown between Field Yates and Trey Wingo. Almost 4 minutes, but well worth the listen. Check it out.
For as much as this past year sucked, I think Raiders fans feel right now. And they got Fernando Mendoza, and he's got to actually prove it. But, like, everything I see from the Raiders on social media seems to be very high vibes right now, amidst an offseason that included, obviously, Fernando Mendoza being signed and some big money free agent signings, but also a wild U-turn on a trade that wasn't for the best player they've had in quite some time.
Listen, I agree with you. And, you know, people normally don't get excited about center news, but, like, the fact that they got Tyler Linderbaum to be there basically to protect Fernando Mendoza, and they get to keep Max. The Raiders, I've always said this, the Raiders find a way to mess it up almost always, but the league is more interesting when the Raiders are relevant. And I think all the moves they've made this offseason, including one that sort of fell into their lap, getting Max Crosby back, makes them a really interesting team this year.
I agree, and I will say this, and this is not just, this is mostly centered around last offseason, but to varying degrees, we've seen this with them in the past as well, this was the most honest they've been about the roster and how to get where they want to go in quite some time. Last offseason, they hired the oldest head coach in NFL history, Pete Carroll, who, to my knowledge, doesn't have this tattooed, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has a tattoo on, this right here that says, hey, compete, 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 right? He always wants to compete. And look back at the moves they made this past offseason, meaning leading into the 2025 year, right? Obviously, the Geno Smith signing headlined it, and I will sit here and tell you the trade. I was an advocate for the trade at the time, so it
made sense. And you're getting those two guys together that had success in Seattle. It made sense.
Yeah, but the idea was we're going to trade for Geno Smith, and we're going to take a running back 6th overall, and we're going to win, right? Yeah. This offseason, while they did spend big in free agency, most really of the players they signed were coming off of their rookie deals, so they're either prior to or entering their prime, or maybe in the beginning of their prime, age-wise, and like this team has much more of a vision now. The way they drafted, I thought, was much more, felt like the coaches side of the operation, scouting side of the operation were in lockstep, which I think one of the easiest ways to get stuck in neutral in the NFL is when you've got competing agendas. You've got, like the Raiders last year, I always think about this, they drafted in the final 2 rounds a quarterback in Cam Miller out of North Dakota State and a quarterback out of Montana State, Tommy Mellott, who people thought he could be like a Julian Edelman type college quarterback who becomes a punt returner, wide receiver. And both guys didn't even make it out of training camp. And it's like when you draft those players, they are developmental guys, right? Like the very least, they need to be on your practice squad. Mellott is not. I think Cam Miller is in Miami. Like that to me spoke to, hey, the coaching staff was so focused on the guys that needed to win. So we got to bring in a guy like Devin White to play linebacker for us last year, who had been sort of floating around the league. Jamal Adams playing for them this past year, right? Like you had the worst record in the NFL. What are those guys doing playing meaningful snaps for you? You should be worried about development. And it feels like this coaching staff and this scouting staff are aligned that it's going to take some time. But we think we have the number one piece in the control panel, which is our quarterback, and we're going to build this thing up in a very competitive division we play in.
It feels like there's a plan that's not just for the next 12 months for the first time in a long time. And if you're Raider fans, that should make you happier than anything else. There seems to be some sort of cognitive, organized process for going forward.
So hearing Field Yates and Trey Wingo break down what the Raiders have going for them, what they went through last year, and it's obviously well worth it because now the plan is in place. And I think Trey Wingo hit it on the head when he said, you know what, for the longest time, I didn't know what the Raiders' plan was. And he said that when he joined my radio show on Monday. Didn't know what the Raiders' plan was. A lot of times it seemed like that they would just go with something and hope it stuck. And this time it doesn't feel like that. And I just really like that because it's something that we've been talking about. But it's easy for someone like me who's around it all the time to say, oh, yeah, I can clearly see the plan. Can't you? But for others outside of the organization to be looking and paying attention to what they have going on, and they notice, okay, I see what they're doing. I see that they're all aligned, which is something that we've talked about for quite a while, right? Having the front office and the coaching staff all on the same page, all that matters, and that's something that the Raiders haven't had for quite a while. And so, you know, I feel like it's a new day and age for Raiders football, right? I talked about on my radio show on Monday, I had a fun conversation. I was talking about, you know, how would you describe your Raider fandom if, you know, you were writing a book and it was a title of a book, and I called mine The White Tiger. And I got that from John Gruden when he had, remember, Martavis Bryant on the team, and he said, man, the white tiger, you go to the zoo, and every once in a while the white tiger's there, and you see it, and you're like, oh, man, that's great. But then other times you go, and you never see the white tiger. That's how my fandom's been, right? I haven't seen all the glorious winning of the silver and black. I've seen patches of winning. I've seen them go to the Super Bowl. I've seen them make it to the playoffs. I've heard about all the, you know, the winning. So I know it's there. It's not like Bigfoot where you have to convince me that there's really a Bigfoot, right? We hear about the greatness of Bigfoot and how massive he is, but we never see it. So that's not where I would put my Raider fandom. That's just, it's something that I know the winning has been there. I've seen some greatness. I've seen some really good play. I've known really good players, right? But haven't seen it consistently. Now with the Raiders and the way that they're going moving forward with John Spytek and Clint Kubiak and everyone else is leading the charge, Fernando Mendoza obviously going to come in and be quarterback of the future. I feel like, and I use it in hip hop terms, it's the rebirth, right? There's a lot of new life being added to the Raiders organization right now. And all those guys that I mentioned and then some, they all are playing a role in it. And so when you hear guys like Field Yates and Trey Wingo talk about, you know, what they're hearing, and look, the Raiders still have to go out there and do it. Just because everything looks good and sounds good doesn't mean that they're going to go win 9 or 10 games. As I mentioned on Monday's show, they have a very tough schedule. Regardless of exactly how the schedule plays out, the games are tough. It's not like they have some easy, you know, everyone's talking about last place schedule. No. The last place schedule was last year. That was the one that was supposed to get you 7, 8 wins, right? Remember, oh, man, they're going to do better. My words, not yours. They're going to do better than they did the year before. They're going to double their wins at least. That gives them 8, right? And people thought I was shortchanging the Raiders. They ended up with 3. So, again, I don't know what that means and how much that's going to translate into wins, especially with the teams that they have to play. They have a lot of tough teams at Allegiant. And they're going to have some tough road games. And, of course, once it's all put together, we'll find out when the bye week is. We'll find out, you know, how many times they have to go west to east. You know, and how many road games are they on the road in back-to-back situations. You know, what's their Sunday, Thursday look like? All that. There's a lot of factors that'll play into what the Raiders do. And, obviously, health is going to be major as well because they're still not the deepest team. Do they have talent? Absolutely. But they're not that deep yet. They haven't got there yet. And so at some point in the season, you know, some of these young guys are probably going to really be dependent on to play. and contribute in a major way, because injuries are inevitable. That's going to happen. That's not if they happen. That's when they happen. You just hope that they don't happen to guys that are big-time contributors, because the Raiders just aren't deep enough yet, which most teams aren't. That's the reality. Like, I don't want to shortchange, the Raiders and act like they are the only team that don't have a lot of depth, but most teams don't. There's a reason why, there's certain teams that have certain big-time players, they want to always hold on to them because, man, it's so hard to get that kind of deep talent on the roster. But I could just appreciate when guys are acknowledging that aren't from the Raider bubble, like a Field Yates from ESPN, like Trey Wingo, who was from ESPN for the longest, who does his own thing now, has the Wingo Network, and, of course, the Straight Facts Homie podcast, amongst others, talking about the Raiders, saying that they won, and they have won. They've been one of the winners of the offseason. Now, again, translating it to the regular season, which is going to be OTAs, which is going on, right? Mandatory minicamp, which will be going on, training camp, preseason, and the regular season. How do you take that positive momentum, that positive energy, that juice that you have from the offseason, from everything that you've been able to do, and translate that and, show progress in the regular season? That's up to the Raiders. They'll have to figure that out. Coming up in segment number 3, what's on your mind? Your calls and texts will close out the show. 707-654-4693. We'll hear from you next. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that is Gametime. We can stream anything. Order food in minutes, do everything from our phones, and somehow buying tickets to live events still feels way harder than it should be. Long lines, confusing checkout, prices jumping at the last second. It really shouldn't be that complicated. And that's why you got to use Gametime. It gives fans the advantage and makes getting tickets fast and simple. You can look at tickets for an upcoming game. It'll take you minutes to find great options. You can look at the full price up front. No surprise fees at checkout. Seat views are great. You can check your exact view before you buy. Zone deals is where you pick the section and save even more. 2 taps, and you have great seats locked in, just like that. Quick, easy, and actually makes you want to go to more events. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets to every type of event with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDON. It's all one word for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off. LOCKEDON, $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Before we get to that, though, do want to thank you so much for making this the first listen of the day. Let's start out with a call from Sucker Free Raider. He's calling to hit us with a quick Sucker Free 3. Here he goes, Sucker Free Raider.
Hey, what's good, Q? Sucker Free Raider here, man. Gonna hit you with a Sucker Free 3 real quick. Number 1, even though they say it may not happen, man, Raiders, Niners, in Mexico, that's just like natural. That should be done deal already. Number 2, I'm good with the receivers we got, just like you mentioned, Naylor. Man, they got faith in Naylor. I don't really see another receiver out there that's just going to tip the scales in our favor. So just see what we got in house. And number 3, man, the running back Washington and Ashton, the nickname Smoking Ash. Because after the fire, man, that's all that's left. Go Raiders.
Sucker Free, thanks so much. It's good to hear from you, my man. It's funny hearing you say a Sucker Free 3 reminded me of our guy T3 Raider Facts, right? Remember he used to call any of the OGs listening to the show that's been listening from day one. Remember T3 Raider Facts used to hit us with the, what was it? T3 Raider Facts with the, 5 quick hits of the day, 5 quick facts of the day. Who was it? Who was it he was trying to tell to pay? Was it Hunter Renfrow? I can't remember who it was, but man, it was like every day until they paid that guy. I can't remember who it was, but anyway, that's what that reminded me of. So your Sucker Free 3, Raiders versus 49ers in Mexico City. That's definitely a game I'd be interested in going to. I'm not usually a big international guy. That game I'd have interest in. But as I mentioned in the first segment, apparently the 49ers are trying to petition that game to stay in Santa Clara. I don't know why, but that's what it sounds like. The wide receivers, you hit it on the head. I think that they're fine. See what you have, and then go from there. You're not going to fix everything over the course of one offseason, but if you're really good at what you do, you'll be able to consistently add talent to the mix. Smoke and Ash, that's a pretty cool nickname. And they're going to be a really good 1-2 punch. I'm excited about what Mike Washington Jr. can do as a wingman for Ashton Genty. Clint Kubiak's words, not mine. I think that'd be really great. And look, I'm not sleeping on Roman Hemby as a 3-headed monster. I think that really could be a factor as well, as long as he makes the roster, undrafted free agent out of Indiana. I think all 3 of those running backs could really do some wonders for that Raiders running back room. But thanks so much for the call. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Raider Tommy in Santa Monica. Said, hey, what's up, Q? What's up? Watching the Monday show, I was going to talk about Trey Tucker, but you just told me all the teams we have to play NFC West. Damn. If they put us in Denver, KC, Buffalo, New England, or Cleveland in November or December, and even if they're good weather games, this looks more like a first-place schedule compared to a last-place one. Wow, this is going to be tough. Anyway, Trey's going to show out this year. Take care. Raider Tommy from Santa Monica, California. Peace. Thanks so much. I appreciate you. And, yeah, that was going back to my point. The schedule's not going to be easy, right? I know that this is only a 3-win team, and, yeah, everyone looks at it as like, oh, they got a last-place schedule, but those teams that they're playing, looking at Buffalo, the NFC West that you mentioned, obviously that's going to be tough outside of Arizona, right? But, you look at Seattle, you look at the Rams, you look at the 49ers, those are nothing to shake a stick at, right? And you've got some really tough games on the docket for sure. Now we just have to wait and see exactly what order they're going to be lined up in. But, yeah, it's going to be tough. And Trey Tucker, man, he's going into a contract year. You know what contract years always, those are always the years the guys show up and show out. So Trey Tucker really started to evolve and come into his own last year. I'd love to see him build off of that, especially in this Clint Kubiak-led offense. Thanks so much for the text. Definitely appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Brother Dre in the A. He's calling as he's sitting in traffic in Atlanta to talk about the shields on the helmets, nicknames for Fernando Mendoza, and more. Here he is, Brother Dre in the A.
What up, Q? It's Brother Dre in the A, man, driving home in this Atlanta traffic, man, and thinking about you. I just listened to your show today for Monday, and made me think about a couple things. One is when it comes to the helmet stickers, as people earn stickers, are they given the stickers then, or is there like a sticker ceremony where do they do like 10 at a time? Is it one at a time? I'm really curious to know how the stickers get handed out actually at the time that they are earned by the individual players. The other thing, we were talking about on today's show, yesterday. Anyway, on the Monday show, how about that? You were talking about a nickname for Fernando Mendoza, and I haven't heard this, and I think it really is actually a pretty good one. With the whole Darth Vader sort of theme that we have, how about if Fernando Mendoza is the Mandalorian? Get it? The Mandalorian. Anyway, see how that works, Q. Thanks a lot, man. Brother Dre out.
Brother Dre, D-R-E, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And to be honest, I'm not sure when the shields are going to be handed out. I'm not sure, right? I'm assuming it's going to be sometime in training camp. We haven't talked to the coaches. That'll definitely be something that we ask the coaches when we get that opportunity. I think that's not till mandatory minicamp. I'm not 100% sure, right? OTAs, I believe that we'll get an opportunity to talk to a couple players. I don't think we'll talk to the head coach again until mandatory minicamp. But whenever that chance is, we'll definitely get that, definitely get that question in and see what the answer is. As far as the Mandalorian, I'm not a Star Wars guy. I know that it's pretty big right now. Star Wars is pretty big. Is there like another movie coming out? I know my guy Emmett Golden had mentioned Star Wars on my radio show, ESPN's Game Night on Monday night. So that's why it's at the top of my mind. I'm not really, you know me, I'm not really a movie guy, not really a TV guy. I'm a Law & Order, SVU, and a Shark Tank guy. Very simple, and you can pick it up at any time. I can literally not watch Law & Order, SVU for 6 months and come back and watch it and pick it up like I know exactly where it's at. Right, it'll be some rerun that I've probably already seen, or even if it's a new one, I'll still know what's going on. Shark Tank is just fantastic. I love Shark Tank. You'll get me yelling at the TV. You better take the deal. That's exactly what you wanted. Why you wanted that? That's what you came in asking for. Now what? What are you doing? I love me some Shark Tank. I don't know why. I'm not going to invent anything. I'm never going to be on that show, but I really do like it. So there's that. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. I just got time for a couple more of this. Text is from David in the 801. Hey, Q, it's David, longtime listener from the 801 here. Just want to comment on the JPJ trade rumors. In my opinion, it's ridiculous to trade him. We're trying to bolster our offensive line, not make it worse. He's a great player. Why would we trade him? Even if he gets beat as our starter, which he won't, he'd be the best backup at the position in the league. We need all the good players we can get at that position. I don't know who said we should trade him, but doesn't make sense to me. Anyways, please give me your thoughts on that. Thanks so much. Keep up the awesome work. That's David in the 801. I've seen those rumors. I've heard those rumors. I think that they talked about that on the Raiders Squad show on Monday. I wasn't part of that. That was Chantel Chan, Lincoln Kennedy, and Amber Theo Harris. I had an appointment, so I couldn't make it on Monday. I don't think it would make a lot of sense to trade him either, unless they just don't think he fits with what they want to do. That's I guess the best way to put it. But I'm with you. I think he's a very talented dude. I think he definitely can earn a spot along that offensive line as a starter. but I think the competition is a lot more than what it was. So now you look at Miller, that's already a spot at the left tackle spot. Linderbaum, obviously that's a spot there at the center position. I've already penciled in Trey Zune, not saying that he's being given this position. I think Zune's going to be the left guard. So then you look at, all right, who's going to be the right guard? Who's going to be the right tackle? And you got guys like JPJ. You got guys like Caleb Rogers. You guys got like Charles Grant, TJ Glaze, right? There's a lot of different guys trying to compete for only a couple spots. So even if you're right, even if he doesn't win the starting job, he would be a hell of a backup. And I mentioned how the Raiders don't have a ton of talent. He is going into year 3 of the deal. And maybe the reason why they would trade him only, and this is just maybe, I'm not saying that they would, is only because of availability, which is the only reason that I even have any knock on him. I know a lot of people think that I got some agenda against JPJ. I do not. The only thing that I've ever talked about him and questioned him is his availability. And just like Lincoln Kennedy always says, you can't make the club in the tub. The simple statement is, your best ability is availability, and he's not always available. That's the unfortunate part, because I think he could be a hell of a player in this league for a long time, but he's got to be out there on the field to be effective. So thanks so much for the text. I do appreciate you. We'll close out with a call from Fred from Bakersfield. He's calling to talk about the amount of time the Raiders could be willing to ride with Kirk Cousins, and has his own thoughts. Here he is, Fred from Bakersfield.
Hey, what up, Q? It's Fred from Bakersfield, man. Just calling to see on what you think the Raiders are going to do as far as how long is the leash they have for Kirk Cousins. If I was the Raiders, man, I would go up to him and be like, man, look, there's 4 quarters in a football season. Obviously, there's an odd number of games, so we got 1 quarter, that's 5 games, and the rest of the quarter is 4 games. I would tell Kirk Cousins, look, man, it's a production-based business. You need to win the quarter in order for you to get a chance to go for the next quarter. And what I mean by that is that first quarter, he needs to be at least 3-2. If he loses 3 games, then, hey, man, I'm sorry. We're just going to have to see what the kid has, Fernando Mendoza. If you go 3-2, then you have a chance to play the next 4 games. And you got to win that quarter. You know what I mean? And then you get the next 4 games, and you can win that quarter. So that's how I would go about it. I'm curious on your thoughts, man. What would you do? Are you going to play Fernando Mendoza? Are you going to play Kirk Cousins regardless the whole year and see what Mendoza has towards the end? Or are you just going to go off of production? Like, hey, if you keep winning, we keep playing you. But if you can't win, then you're just going to be the backup. All right, man. Hey, appreciate y'all. First listen of the day, every day, man. Appreciate the squad as well. And y'all be easy. Boom.
Big Fred, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you. And yeah, I don't even think it's a matter of, hey, here's a quarter. You've earned the right to play another quarter. I honestly think this is going to be one of those, battles, obviously, in training camp. The players, this is what I've always learned. The players will tell you who's the best guy for the job, because the Raiders and the players on this team are going to want to go out there and play with the guy who gives them the best chance to win, whether that's Kirk Cousins or Fernando Mendoza. They don't care if Fernando was drafted number 1 overall. If he's not picking up the offense and they're not playing well with him, they're going to want to ride with Cousins. And they don't care about Cousins being a veteran, being in the league 12 years, if he doesn't give them the best chance to win. If Fernando's killing it in camp and in practice, they're going to say, hey, that's who we want to go out there and play with. I think that, it's Cousins will probably win the job coming out of camp, but I think it's going to be basically a week-to-week type thing, right? And if he starts to struggle, or the Raiders feel a lot more confident in Fernando Mendoza and the team around him, the offensive line and the weapons around him, then I think that they'll make the move. I don't think that he sits all year long. I really don't. And that's why I'm interested in the where the bye week is when the Raiders schedule drops on Thursday. Wherever their bye week is, that's where I start to look at, okay, that's where the first change might happen. So if it's 4 weeks into the season, it's 4 weeks. If it's 6 weeks, maybe it's 6 weeks. If it's 2 weeks, probably not, right? I mean, it's just so the bye week is going to be the first spot is where I'm going to start when it comes to where a change could happen if Kirk Cousins wins the job coming out of camp. And that's a big if, because I think Fernando Mendoza, just from seeing pictures and everything floating around, I'm not at practice, but being out there, seeing what they're doing on social media with some of the pictures of what he's, the way he's slinging the ball around the yard, it looks like he's pretty comfortable with what he's doing out there. But again, being comfortable throwing the ball with, no helmets on, no pads, no nothing like that, that's one thing. Going out there and executing an offense in a training camp type format is a whole nother thing. So thanks so much for that call. Do appreciate you. Got a lengthy text from Ramblin' Raider in Texas by way of the 925. We'll lead that off tomorrow's show. We'll have more news and notes for sure, probably more schedule release as well. There'll be plenty that we have here on the show, and we'll continue with our conversation as we do on the daily. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.